welcome to the very first episode of The L Show. My name is Lungi Silibisi and I am your host. This is my podcast. And if you're here, I appreciate you because starting something new means trusting that the conversation matters. This podcast exists to question narratives, unpack power, and talk honestly about the systems that shape our lives, especially here in South Africa. And today's episode might make you uncomfortable, and that's okay. This is episode one, and we are starting with something foundational. Today, we're going to be talking about psychological operations, better known as Psyops. Not conspiracy theories, not science fiction, real documented strategies that have been used by governments, organizations, companies, and influential individuals, including right here in South Africa. And yeah, this will be a fun podcast. I mean, yes, this is not a conspiracy theory or science fiction, but somewhere along the line, we'll be having those, um, theories and ideas or even thoughts that make you go, what if? You know? So let's get into it, man. What is a PSYOP? Well, at its core, a PSYOP is a planned strategy designed to influence how a target audience thinks, feels, behaves, or makes decisions. PSYOPs are basically psychological operations. They deal with like how your mind works. They control how we think, what we say, what we see, and what we hear. And usually the target audience is the general public. The tools may be propaganda, misinformation, emotional framing, selective truth, and yeah, basically those, man. Even more, if you know of any, let me know down in the comment section. These tactics are used for financial gain, political power, narrative control, and sometimes character assassination. Governments are famous for using psyops, but they're not the only ones. Corporations, media houses, influencers, anyone with reach and influence can use them. And yes, they're still being used today. They are being used. I probably even used them on this video. But to get into it, I'd like to take you back to make you understand that this is not something that only started today, but it's something that has been going on for quite some time. So let's rewind. Um, Between 1966 and 1989, South Africa was involved in a low intensity war that many citizens barely knew about. The South African Defence Force was engaged in conflict with the Namibian army associated with SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization. I'm sorry. This war extended into Angola, where South African forces carried out raids aimed at disrupting SWAPO bases and countering what were seen as Soviet-backed threats from Angolan and Cuban forces. Because this wasn't a conventional war, psychological operations played a major role. And the goal was to shape perception within local communities to demoralize opposition fighters, to encourage defections. Sometimes these psyops were paired with direct combat missions to capture or kill agents. Yes, that was our military. That was us. But I want to be clear. I am proud of my country, and I'm grateful that today we're not burdened by open war like so many other nations. But we need to be honest. South Africa today is not the country that was promised in 1994. That's just the hard truth. I mean, many of the systems used to gain power back then never truly disappeared. And it's time we stand up and we actually let the world know that what they see on the media, on their phones, their TVs, on the news, what they read about when it comes to South Africa, that's just the front. There is a deeper and darker South Africa that they do not know about. But moving on from that, I would like to explain a few methods that were used during the war. Um, that I don't know, maybe helped win us the war. I don't know. If you have any information, just hit me up in the comment section or go over to my Instagram, the L Show, and shoot me a DM if you have any more information. I'd like to hear from you. Basically, the methods are the two sides of the same coin. And during the period that I mentioned, one common tactic was leaflet campaigns. The SADF distributed leaflets promising safe passage to those who switched sides. On the surface, that sounds humane, even noble, and for some people it was. But for those who believed in a different path than SWAPO or the Namibian army, this offered a safety this offered safety, sometimes in exchange for information. But for others, like the ones who believed in a different cause, the choice wasn't so free. Pressure, fear, and survival can force decisions that don't reflect true belief. And I'm not here to say which side was right or wrong. I'm here to point out something important. What the public sees is really the full story. And the disturbing part is that these tactics that existed back then, they're pretty similar to strategies that are still being used today. So, with that being said, I would like to introduce you guys to the FATE model. FATE. On the 13th of November 2025, American podcaster and former US Navy SEAL Sean Ryan released an episode on his podcast featuring author Chase Hughes. Chase Hughes wrote the Ellipsis Manual, Analysis and Engineering of Human Behavior. I really suggest that you go and read that book or some of it. It's going to help you understand what I'm talking about much more. And in that conversation, he broke down a psychological influence framework known as the FATE model. FATE stands for focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. And once you understand this model, you start seeing it everywhere. Even here in South Africa, you start seeing it everywhere. And I would like to break it down for you. First things first is focus. Look over here. Focus on this. Hey, check this out. This is what it basically means. But in more introspect, have you noticed that whenever the South African government is under heavy scrutiny, scandals, investigation, credibility crisis, something else suddenly comes up and dominates the news cycle? A viral social media trend, a sensational story, basically just like distractions. You have seen these, you know what I'm talking about. Your favorite influencer is stuck somewhere and they can't come back home, whilst here in the country we're dealing with like massive news. And you know these stories, man. And basically that is focus. They move your attention away, tie up loose ends quietly, and then return to the issue once public interest has faded. The second one is authority. Trust the checkmark. And authority today doesn't always come from expertise. It comes from verification badges, follow accounts, the word official in the username, because we use social media so much and it has become the major source of news, basically, if I'm correct. I stand to be corrected on that one. But when verified accounts with massive reach all push the same message at the same time across all platforms on social media, that should make you pause. That should raise the hair behind your neck. That should make you think, hmm, what is going on? And these accounts dominate timelines, they're promoted, they're rarely suppressed. They don't get blackballed or anything like that unless they start telling the real truth. And we've seen this happen. We know of accounts like these that has happened to, and we know people that have become victims of this. And it's how stories like COVID became all consuming. And it's funny how quickly the focus shifted once Russia invaded Ukraine. Not saying the COVID wasn't real because it personally didn't affect me. Um, I believe it was real, but I have my own opinions, which we will talk about in future episodes. I'm just saying that our attention is being managed, right? And moving on to the next one, the T. T stands for tribe. It's us versus them. And humans need belonging. We need community, identity, and power structures understand this deeply. Politics, entertainment, businesses, ideologies, and in South Africa, tribal narratives are constantly weaponized. Every single cycle, every single election cycle, fear resurfaces. That what if white people gain power again? Apartheid will return. And they may disagree with me, but common folk know that this is true. These are conversations that happen every single time there are elections. Ever since I was born, the same conversation has been happening even today. And whether you disagree or not, the emotional response is the point. I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong. I mean, racism still exists. It still harms people, and but fear is one of the strongest tools of control. That is something we need to remember. Fear is something that is very strong if you want to use it to gain control. And last but not least, we have emotion. And this is when logic loses, basically. And this one hits close to home because it's mostly targeted at women, and I'm someone who was raised by a lot of women around me, so I hate it and it angers me when I see this being used um, as a psyop. Excuse me. I just hate it. But it's often used in character assassination attempts, targeting individuals, organizations, or ideas so another idea can rise. Usually, one idea that the government just agrees with 100%, right? And they usually attack using personal history, past trauma, or even selective storytelling. Look at these. Look this up. You start to see these for yourself. And in South Africa, one of the most emotionally charged tools is gender-based violence. GBV is real, and it's horrific. It demands action. We've been crying about it. Like, this needs your undivided attention. We need you guys to act on this. But we also need to talk about timing. Notice whenever GBV stories start to dominate headlines, I want you to go ahead and look at other stories that are happening around the same time. It's usually when there's a lot of attention on government mostly. Um, the furthest one I can remember was probably during 2020. There was a lot of GBV cases coming up during lockdowns and all of that. There were so many reasons behind those, but the most recent one was during the G20 summit, and that was our chance to come out and cry out to other world leaders and be like, hey, our leaders are lying to us. Our leaders are lying to you guys. What you're seeing here, this clean and safe looking South Africa, this is a smoke screen. This all of this is a lie. This is not what South Africa is every single day. I'm not saying South Africa is dangerous, but at the time crime was very low. It I mean, this Johannesburg CBD, those of you who know it, was being cleaned. It was clean. It was squeaky clean as Santon is. But you know, emotion overrides logic, and when logic is gone, manipulation becomes easy. So that's the fate model in a very short explanation. And in closing, I would like to explain to you guys why this matters. This isn't about paranoia. I'm not trying to get you guys paranoid. It's about awareness. Because once you see the framework, you can't unsee it. And I believe that is when we'll start to think for ourselves. We won't allow other people to tell us how to think. We'll become mentally free. And this is episode 1. And if there's one takeaway, it's this: pay attention to where your attention is being directed, because power rarely announces itself. So, with that being said, my name is Mlungisi. This is the L Show. Please like, subscribe, and share, and follow us on Instagram or at the L Show. And I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.